So again, good evening, everyone. And again, it's nice to see all of you again. And today's topic might be interesting for some people, but at the same time, I don't think I have the answer, but we can kind of discuss. First of all, according to the Buddhism, we are responsible for our own experiences. Our actions are responsible for our own experiences. It doesn't mean that other factors cannot contribute, doesn't contribute. Whether it's other individuals or whether it's elements, whatever, it doesn't mean other factors cannot contribute towards our experience. But the main cause, even though there might be other factors that are contributing towards our different experiences, but the principle or the main cause is our own karma or our own actions. Therefore, we are the responsible for our own experience, whatever experience, and our actions are the responsible, whether you call it karma or our actions are the responsible of our own experience. So that is the view, okay, or understanding. Also, sometimes when we talk about karma, a lot of people, we tend to kind of associate that with past, all the time with the past, you know. But it doesn't always has to be associated with the past. It could be in the present moment as well, you know, present karma, present actions. And so I think that is another thing that I want to, so just as an external world, you know, like the world of the plant, we see, you know, there are many factors, cause and conditions that contribute or come into the role to creation of particular plant or the growth of the particular plant, you know, as we also discussed a little bit last week, you know, the weather, the soil, the light, the heat, the fertilizer, the water, so many factors, and the persons who's taking care of it, and the environment around that plant, what kind of other plant are there, so and so on. So many factors and conditions contribute towards the growth of that particular plant. At the same time, the principle, the substantial cause of that plant is that the seed of that plant. While the seed is the main plant, main cause, substantial principle cause of that plant, we cannot ignore other cooperating factors, contributing factors and cause and conditions. even though a lot of time, what kind of seed you get, it very much depends how the plant will grow. Even though that is the main factor, but at the same time, there are many other factors that we cannot ignore or neglect. And that comes same with the internal world when we talk about our experience. Different experiences. Pleasant, unpleasant, and different kind of pleasant, different kind of unpleasantness, and neutral feelings, and so forth. All different experience that we go through. That being the case, then definitely, even though we are responsible for our own experience, even though we are responsible, or our action is responsible, or our karma is responsible for our experiences, at the same time, there are many factors that can contribute. And so therefore, praying to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is one of the factors that can be helpful. One of the factors that can contribute towards our experience, or towards the experience of sentient beings. So I think if we understand that, then we wouldn't have conflict. Okay? The Buddhas, by praying to the Buddhas and receiving some blessings and help, benefit from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, can play contributing factors towards changing our experiences. So I think, so that is how it helps, okay? So I personally doesn't feel there is a contradictions that our karma being responsible, at the same time getting some other help, benefit as a contributing factors, cooperative factors. And so that is just like if we can apply that, or when we apply that to external world as plant world, then we can understand that. And so that is same that applies same to the internal world of our experience, sentient being experience. Okay, so that is next. What is prayer? Because we are talking about praying to Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, in order to change our experience, or the situation that bring change in our experience. I think when we talk about prayer, I think that maybe we all have different meaning in our head, what prayer means. Even though we are saying same words, prayer, probably many of us are relating with so many different ways, especially if we are coming from a certain background. And that is where the conflict comes about the karma and praying to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Because when we talk about prayers, sometimes because of certain background, we always feel like then that means we are praying to some kind of very powerful, all creator, kind of, whether you call it God or Buddha or something, and then just by doing that, that will fix everything. Just by doing that prayer to that, whatever object of that prayer, then without changing your actions, without changing your karma, without changing your behavior, everything will be kind of changed by that, the object of the prayers. And so then when we have that kind of understanding or misunderstanding, then we will have conflict. Buddha is not the creator of our experience, all-powerful creator of all our experience. But at the same time, it doesn't mean Buddha cannot contribute or help us. It doesn't mean Buddha Bodhisattvas cannot help or contribute towards our experience. Just as doctor can help us in our experience when dealing with certain situations. Just as our family, friend can help us when we are dealing with certain situations. In the same way, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas absolutely can also help us. Sometimes there is sense of some arrogance in our human beings or in our thinking or attitude. While we think, oh, someone can help me, when we need help, whether it's friends, families, teachers in our educations, doctor, nurse in dealing with our health, and others, advisors, guidance in dealing with different situations. We definitely feel they can help us. That is why we seek their help. And they are able to help. But when we think of help from Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, sometimes we have some kind of hesitations. Or how can they help us? As though, it's superstitious. They cannot help. There's sense of that. And if the ordinary human being can help us, why can't enlightened beings, more enlightened beings, cannot help us when we seek their help? And just as, even though we can seek others' help in human beings, different peoples in a different area, when we are seeking help in different areas of help we need at different time, in different situations, just as they can contribute, they can help us at the same time, it always comes, in order to be able to receive the help, it has to come from yourself. At the end, it is yourself. Isn't it? You seek help and you should be ready to kind of change. If you want to somehow change, something to happen. So there is no conflict that to have change, the responsibility is on yourself. At the same time, you can get help from others. Within our, in our life. In same way, our karma, our action, we ourselves are responsible for our experience. At the same time, we can get some help, some contribution from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas when we seek their help. So sometimes, we see okay. I think if you can relate that, then I think I don't feel there will be a conflict to be able to understand the help. So we are talking about the prayers, yeah? So that is where it came. In Buddhism, prayer is very vast. Prayer really means aspirations. Whether you say in word or not, if you have the aspirations, that is the prayer. And sometimes we bring that aspiration in the word and we say it. but main is to have that aspirations. So prayer doesn't mean always, first of all, prayer in Buddhism doesn't always mean praying for something very powerful to solve our problems. Okay? For example, we have prayer for immeasurable, for example. May all sentient beings be free from suffering, cause of suffering, have happiness, cause of happiness. May they all be abide in equanimity, and may they all never be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. That is prayer. We very often recite, but that is aspirations. Same refuge bodhicitta prayer we recite. And so most of the prayers, you can see that. But of course, there are certain practice, there are certain prayer where we invoke the enlightened beings, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and we go in refuge and cultivate the Bodhicitta intentions, and then, whatever different form of practice, then we request or we seek their blessing, their help, whether to individual or for others. So definitely sometimes there is certain part of that kind of prayer as well. Okay. While there is that kind of prayer, but at the same time, while we can receive the help and blessing from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to change the experience and situation of oneself and others, but at the same time, if we ourselves or the others does not change their action, their karma, that just by that itself will not change. But when we started to change ourselves and then we seek that help, then we can, that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas blessing, and that can help us to change our experience further or better and quickly and like that. Just like when we talk about the help from, when we seek help from other peoples in different areas. So that is how and the way the prayer works, the way I personally understand, okay, and as I mentioned, I could be totally wrong, off, and you don't have to believe, but it's something that you can, it's something to think about and see whether that is the case or not. Something to contemplate, consider, and something to talk about. Because I often also, reflect, contemplate a lot on those issues. Because sometimes I also have conflict at the very beginning about if they're just praying for the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, those enlightenment is going to solve the problem, then I don't have to change myself. I don't have to change my action. I just pray for them. And then, I have conflict with that idea of whole idea of karma. And as Buddha said, you yourself is your enemy, you yourself is your friend. And that is that means you are the responsible for your own experiences. And so as I was trying to understand many of those practice or prayer that we do, as I mentioned before, how there is no conflict. And my understanding, again, as I mentioned, I already mentioned before, just as we seek others' help in human beings, also and able to receive some help, also definitely we will be able to also, when we seek through those prayers, we will be able to receive some help from Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But at the same time, the principal cause to the change, the principal cause, the primary cause has to be our own karma and actions and ourselves. So, and the way prayer works in those situations is one way of the way it helps, the way it works is that we make all those prayers, with good intention at the very beginning, bodhicitta intentions, and then with a strong faith in those enlightened beings. And then all other practices that we engage into, seven limb practice and many other practices that we engage into. And through all this practice, we create a lot of virtues, a lot of merit. Sometimes I like to use the virtues more than the merit because a lot of people have misunderstanding when we use the merit. The word, I think they don't have that kind of misunderstanding or resistance to the creating virtues. But when you say it's to create merit, a lot of people have resistance just by that word, because I think they have some misunderstanding because of the way maybe the words you use in normal, and they still bring that understanding even in when we are trying to, because sometimes we are using the same word, but it is a different meaning in a different context, and especially, so anyway, so we create a lot of merit, a lot of virtues through those practice with good intention and everything, with the right intention, good intent. And once we have created those virtues, then we dedicate, whether for our own well-being or if we are doing for someone's well-being, we dedicate for them. So that is like you work very hard and you earn, and then you share that with others. And that is how we can, by praying and by engaging those practice and by praying to enlightened beings and dedicating for other beings or other beings' well-being, so that is how we can affect others or change, have some contribution towards others. There are many stories, during the Buddha's time, also later, at the Buddha's time, one time, there was one monk, while he was walking towards somewhere, there was one pregnant woman, and she is trying to give birth, but she was struggling, a lot of pain, and there was a lot of people. And they asked him, because he is a spiritual, he is a monk, a spiritual, everyone seek their help for any kind of situation. They immediately, when they saw him, they said, please, help us, please pray for us, please for this, to have the painless and good birth of that child. And he didn't know what to do. Normally he come from a different background where he would pray for the God immediately, But now, after he met the Dharma, that wasn't the case. So he was kind of confused and he didn't know what to do, And then later when he met the Buddha, and he asked him, and the Buddha advised him, you dedicate all the virtues you have created in the past, present, futures, all the virtues, and with that, all the virtues you have created in the past, all the merit virtues you have, which you have created with yourself, you sincerely dedicate for that person in those situations. So that was the advice Buddha gave, and and so similarly, that is the case. We do the practice, whatever practice we do, and then at the end, we dedicate the virtues of that practice and all the virtues that were created, but especially through the practice that we dedicate, especially for that in that situation, for that person, that individual, and the situation, and then we dedicate. So that is how, that is why there is always extensive dedication at the end. That is one how it affects, how it works. Also, when you read the sutras, you always see it on all sutras, or I wouldn't say all the sutras, but many of them, many of the sutras, Buddha with his followers, those who are alms, begging, for the food of the day. And after they have eaten the food, then they sit, the Buddha sit, and then all the disciples gather. And then normally the Buddha will dedicate all the virtues for the well-being of the people who supported the Sangha, the food. So that is how it, Buddha always, after the meal, he dedicated for everyone, and especially those who supported for that meal. And again, that is dedicating the virtues. And through that, and so that is how a lot of our prayers are like that, We do practice and then we dedicate. Because there is something virtuous, and then there is something to dedicate. And so we do dedicate, and that is how it helps individual to whomever it is prayed. And does it really help or not? We don't have scientific, what you call, to show it. Definitely, those are that we have to, what the Buddha said, and through that, and reason, if you use reason, it makes sense. It makes sense, and definitely it makes, in terms of real, I have seen certain report in the past. I think one of them was in Times News or somewhere at one time, where it's in that research or experiment they did, they found that prayers helpful. According to that one, they said, there were people being treated in hospital for same sickness, and they kind of divided into group. And for one group, they asked people to pray. For one group, they didn't ask people to pray. And they were being given same treatments. And for those patients who were requested prayers, they didn't tell the patient that they were being prayed. They didn't tell the patient didn't know. And then I don't know, I don't remember how many weeks or that. And then they found the people who were being prayed, they recover and respond better and more quickly. So that was one of the times. But also I saw in others, where some others where they didn't find differences. So, I think still there are many different, and I don't know in one cases why they found the differences, where they did really found differences, and in other cases. So those are something, something that so I guess maybe more and more research is needed. And I don't know, sometimes even with all this research, whether they would be really able to find it, because sometimes the way it has is subtle, the effect it has is subtle. And sometimes we only look for a very gross, immediate kind of effect. And sometimes the effect doesn't have a immediate big impact, but it has a subtle impact, which is very subtle. Sometimes is sometimes like sudden like for sudden plant, maybe if you are giving a drop of water each day, maybe we wouldn't have a strong impact where the flower would grow because it doesn't have enough. But at the same time, it might be able to keep it alive, even though it is not really growing, that it should be growing, but maybe. So sometimes we think because it's not growing, then it is not having an effect. But there is having effect. That is what is keeping it from dying, even though it is not growing very fast due to the lack of the water. But just one drop might be able to keep it alive, or even if it's dying, to stop it from dying quickly. And so sometimes the factors or the help is much more subtle, and sometimes we tend to sometimes we tend to see everything in that way, gross way. So I think maybe that is all. What is the time? Okay. And also, there are many stories. Some of the monks from the big monastery, like Saradevanganden, they go back to their village, to visit their families. And because they come from some of those great monasteries, people have a lot of respect, very high regard in a lot of those villages in Tibet, So then one time they invited one of the monks, because they are having some issues, some problems, to do certain rituals. And he didn't know that particular rituals, And then he got a little bit kind of scared, because they have so much expectations, so much hope and regard, and he felt like, oh, now they put him on the spot, and that could damage the reputation of the whole monastery as well, So but he didn't know the rituals, the ritual that they asked him to do for that purpose, So he sincerely dedicated from his heart all the studies, all the practice that I've done in the monasteries, all through this year, through all of that, through all the practice and virtues that I have done, that I have dedicated, that I have made whatever that problem, may there be relief of that problem, that pain, that suffering. So he sincerely dedicated from his heart, and then he recited some, some root text from the study that we do, And then it seems to affect whatever problem, suffering they were going through, that was reduced and relieved. And so, even though he didn't do the actual ritual they asked him to, but because he did sincerely, with that sincerity, and then when he dedicated all his virtues, then it has an effect, positive impact. And that is how the prayers, and there are many stories like that, because a lot of the monks, including myself, from those big monasteries, we don't do too much rituals, and we don't know how to do rituals very much. Sometimes we don't have interest to do that. I did learn when I went to Gumen Pandit College. Many of them learned there, but I learned a little bit. But then, because sometimes it can be helpful when certain people ask and need it, but still, that is not something that we are so interested. Our heart is not probably very much into it. And so anyway, so because of that, a lot of the monks from this monastery, when they go to village, sometimes they have a little bit of, because in the village, they really like rituals, and they always ask those different rituals for different things, So anyway, so that just came into my mind, and so those are some of the so I hope you are able to understand while our actions, our karma is responsible, our experience, at the same time how prayer can also help without being contradictory or without conflict. As I mentioned already, with few different examples in the plant, as well as the help that we seek from others, as long as we don't have that conflict, then definitely. So prayer and individual responsibility and trying to change our action, responsibility, karma, go together. Not one is not one for others. Do you get it? Sometimes certain individual, they think they don't have to change their behavior, actions, or whatever. They just need to pray and that will be okay. That doesn't happen. If that's the case, we all will not be in this samsara, we will already be in pure land. So many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas already came before, and they would have prayed for us, and we all will be already in pure land by now. But even though they pray, but since we didn't change ourselves, we didn't change our behavior, our actions, our attitude, our karma, even though we receive some blessings and help, still we're stuck here and suffering, So while we are trying to change the situation by changing the cause and condition for that experience, whatever that experience, while we are trying to change, at the same time, also rely on the blessing and help of the enlightened being like Buddhas, Bodhisattvas. There is nothing to hurt and harm. It only helps. And to go in that, without ignoring or neglecting each of them. We tend to kind of, become almost like stream. We go from one to another. Sometimes we think, oh, those prayer doesn't help, doesn't work. We don't need to pray for the enlightened beings. And we just try to change something. And we ignore and totally neglect that part. Other time, we always just pray and pray and pray without trying to change the actions. Also, that doesn't work. But when it goes together, it works, and that is important. Regardless of how much help it does to others, when we pray for someone, when we pray for someone, how much help it is able to really bring to that individual. That is another factor, another thing. But it helps us. Definitely, that is something we can see ourselves. Definitely, it helps us, others as well, but it's hard to see that. Sometimes it's hard to see that, how our praying being able to help others. And I already mentioned, from the point of reasoning, logic, we dedicate our virtues to others, so we share that, and so that is how it helps them. But like in a tangible way, sometimes it is hard. But in terms of ourselves, it helps, because each time when we pray for others, that means, we care about that person's or that individual. And so therefore, when we, with that kind of intention, because we want to help, we want to be helped, and that feeling of wanting to help, and then on the basis of that feeling, wanting to help, and then trying to do some practice in order to help, that means we are building our love, compassion, bodhicitta stronger and stronger. So that it helps ourselves. Instead of, being blind when you see someone's pain and suffering, blind and no feeling and no prayer, no caring. But when we feel that and when we pray for that, it means we are reconnecting to our good basis of our love and compassion. It's like giving water to that, and that through that it grows. Our love, compassion, bodhicitta become more stronger and bigger and bigger. And definitely, so as I said, it does help us to become a more compassionate, more kind, more better persons. And when you become more better persons, more compassionate, more kind, definitely that will also affect others. We will be more helpful, beneficial to others. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So I think that is all. Maybe I will kind of, for the moment. Any questions, please? Does anyone has questions, comments?
Geshe-la, there were two questions.
Yes.
One was, how does the Sangha help us? Could you talk about Amitabha and his Pure Land and our historical Buddha Shakyamuni? How are aspirations received by these two different Buddhas?
I think it is first of all, I think how we can help Sangha, I think on physical level, I think with DNL we have Sangha Dharma Care Group. Okay, so whoever needs help, they can always contact the Dharma Care Group. And Dharma Care Group is was created to help the Sangha members, physically, spiritually, if they need help, in whatever help, so that is we need to help each other, not only spiritually, but also physically, especially for those who doesn't have families close by, and when they have some situations, difficulties, and that's where the Sangha member can help each others. And then definitely spiritually, sometime in our Sangha, sometimes we all go through some struggles, even spiritual struggles, you started to be, cautioning certain things, maybe which you have not cautioned before, but now things, due to certain situation, due to certain circumstances, you started to caution, and you started to become kind of not so stable. And in those cases, we should be able to discuss those issues with our Dharma friends, Sanghas, bring up instead of keeping yourself. Of course, you can also discuss with your teachers, if your teachers, and also sometimes, with teachers, sometimes it is a little bit hard to be, there is sometimes there is a little bit kind of distant, because of that positions as a teacher and students. Sometimes it is hard to really be yourself fully. You always strain yourself a little bit, you have to be good, so you can't be really yourself sometimes, But with your friends, Sangha members, you can be that. And so then to bring up all these, whatever struggle that you are going through, whatever thought you are having, and to have a discussion can be very helpful sometimes. Sometimes in the monastery, our teachers and the disciplinary and effort always used to say, your classmates are more kind and precious than your own guru. Because you learn so much from your classmates. In our subject, because we spend a lot of time with our classes debating each day, many hours together, and then having discussions, and all of that, With our teachers, maybe we spend 1 hour each day, but with our classmates, we spend a lot of time, So and that is where we really learn through the discussions. And so that is one of the things, with the Sangha members, that even though we don't have formal discussions, I think we had before, but I think somehow, like, Wednesday class, I think we used to have discussion class after the teachings, but I think, most people started leaving after the class, and it didn't stay, Anyway, so I think that is where we can help each others. When we have that sick, we seek that help from others. And just having a conversation is not necessarily that that can be very helpful. So I think we can help physically through prayers, dedications, as well as being with them to offer our suggestion, opinion, advice when they need it. So through that, we need to support each other, and that is our family. The Sangha is our family. And I think, anyway, so. And I forgot about the Amitabha Pure Land thing question. I can see it. Amitabha in his Pure Land and our hero. there are, according to Pure Land traditions, there are so many Pure Land. Each Buddha has their Pure Land, because when you become enlightened, everything transforms. Your environment transforms, your body transforms, your mind transforms, everything transforms in enlightenment. And so then the transformation of your environment, that becomes the Pure Land. And of course, when they are in the path as a bodhisattvas, each of those Buddhas, when they are on the path as a bodhisattva, they have made a different prayers and inspirations for the sentient beings, And so, like when I become enlightened, may I be able to have this and this. And so according to that, then because of their inspirations, because of their prayer they made when they are on the path as a bodhisattvas, so then when they become fully enlightened, so when we have the inspirations, that is related with that particular Buddhas who made those kind of inspiration prayers, then it is has more strong connections in that way, and so therefore, certain individual might have more connections with Amitabha and his Pure Land. Certain individual might have more connection with Cheresik or Avalokiteshvara and his Pure Land. Certain might be connected with Medicine Buddha or all those different Buddhas. And when we talk about the Pure Land, that the Buddha is the Buddhas in the Pure Land are more in Sambhogakaya forms, Sambhogakaya forms. And whereas historical Buddha is in Nirmanakaya forms, and so definitely, so the inspirations we make with different Buddhas, one, the prayers, definitely it depends on many factors. Maybe, whether we have a stronger karmic connection with that or not, or whether our inspiration and the inspiration made by that Buddha during the when he was on the path, whether they have common and whether there are similarity, and so that so many factors kind of come in together. But of course, also we can train to be more connected with one particular, through our inspiration, through our prayers, through our that. Even we don't have strong karmic connection before, but we can create that strong karmic connection now through our intention, inspirations, and the prayer and so on. So Buddha Shakyamuni himself, we don't hear about his Pure Land itself, because again, Buddha Shakyamuni came in a Nirmanakaya form in this world. When we talk about historical world, in a Nirmanakaya form in this, but definitely, a lot of those teachings and a lot of those Vajrayana teachings and a lot of those mandalas, that means that the celestial mansion, the Pure Land, are created by Buddha himself. Buddha, when he was asked by certain teachings on the Vajrayana, then he transformed into those deities and then create in those environment and so on. So in a way, Buddha Shakyamuni encompasses all the Pure Land. Sometime, His Holiness says, and I think it's very true too, sometimes we tend to kind of does not have same high regard, respect to the Buddha historical Buddha as we have for others. Or when you get sick, you remember medicine Buddha. You don't remember Buddha Shakyamuni. When you have an obstacle, maybe you remember, Tara or Pema Sambhava or someone or Wrathful Deity or whatever. You don't remember Buddha Shakyamuni. So when you have other situations, you remember Zambala and all of those, but you don't remember Buddha Shakyamuni. So, and that is the mistake we make. That is the mistake we make. That is due to not understanding, one, all the Buddhas are in essence same. In essence, all the Buddhas are insane. And so sometimes, we tend to think, the teachings come with Buddha Shakyamuni, historical Buddha, but as though he doesn't have any power, he doesn't have power to heal, he doesn't have power to overcome obstacles, he doesn't have power to all of those. And that is, again, another very critical misunderstanding and wrong view, Many of those Buddhas come from the heart of the Buddha Shakyamuni. He transformed that deity and then he gives the initiation in the form of that deity. So if you look from that perspective, and that is, when the student take refuge, the only practice I give is the practice, small, short practice related with the Buddha Shakyamuni. And that is the practice that I do every day. The first thing, among many practice, the first is the Buddha Shakyamuni. He is the source of everything, all the teachings, all the practice, everything for us. And sometimes, we do practice with other deities, but sometimes we tend to kind of just ignore or just kind of, doesn't give any much attention to the history of the Buddha Shakyamuni. Without him, we wouldn't have all these teachings, all this practice. So anyway, just something came in just my mind, So any questions? So we still have 2 minutes. Comment, questions? If you don't have to feel you have to ask, just for sake of asking, okay? But if you have, do please. Yes, please. John? Yes.
It's not a question, Geshe-la, it's just a comment.
Okay.
But what I've noticed just in my own practice when I pray for some of my people that aren't my close friends, or in fact, some I'd say aren't really my friends at all. When I noticed myself, I try to pray for them if they're having some issues, and someone I can think of whom it's very, is not an enemy, but pretty. They're going through a hard time, and it just makes you feel or aware of how isolated you can be, how negative, like although you're saying I say these things, I want the people, may they be, freed from these conditions they have. But really, I know I haven't really been able to really feel that compassion, but it is a start. It's a start because you start to realize, oh, actually, I'm just saying this. I don't really mean it. Not that I'm that hard on myself, but it's just, it makes me aware. And then you have a little bit more compassion. You think, oh, okay, well, they are the same as me. They're just on a different trip and, they've got their own issues. And so in that regard, the prayer is very useful. I feel.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. I think as you mentioned,
That's my comment.
I don't think it is just your experience. It is experience of a lot of people, including myself, but even maybe it is not coming from the depth of your heart and as sincerely as you would be with certain individuals. But it's a start. It's a start. And from there, that means our mind is open. Even though it's not coming from the depth of our heart, but we are still trying, and there is some openness to feel good for even someone you dislike or you have conflict. And that is just the starting. Of course, we need to work on that so that it becomes more and more sincere. So it becomes more and more coming from your deep of your heart. But it's a great start. It's a great start. Okay. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Thank you.